Hi there, welcome back to my weekly Shreddees show. This week I am featuring this 2008 Ibanez Prestige S5470-SOL. That's a lot to say. Anyway, I got this guitar about a year ago. I'd gotten this one in a trade, and I know some of you might be thinking, it's not a Jackson. What are you doing with an Ibanez? Actually, I played a lot of Ibanez's back in the day. My first guitar, which I mentioned in the last video, was actually a BC Rich. But the first guitar I'd actually ever got with a locking system, a Floyd Rose style locking system, was actually an Ibanez Ex370. And I would have gotten that when I was about 16. Yeah, I was about 15, turning 16 about that time. And that was the guitar that I would actually use a lot to play in my first, basement and garage bands back in the day. And part of the reason why I really liked Ibanez is some of my favorite players being like Steve Vai, and especially Alex Skolnick played Ibanez's. And I'd always really liked those, Ibanez for that. And Alex Skolnick especially played a red Sabre model like this, where these have the really thin bodies on them. And I've owned a few of these over the years, actually, and it wasn't until I think it was about my 2006 model, where it actually had this ZR trem system on it, which, even though for locking systems, Floyd Rose are pretty well known, and most of the Jacksons come with it, Ibanez's ZR trem, I really like this trem system. Part of the reason why I think I really like the Ibanez is I know that I had some RGs back in the day. I had a RG 570 and an RG 460, and those had sort of the old Ibanez low pro systems on them, and they were good systems. They stayed in tune especially well, but it wasn't until I got my first S series like this, it was a black one, that it had the ZR trem on it, and I really like the ZR trem on these. So I was excited when I had a chance to get another one of these in a trade. I actually did trade a Jackson for this, so that says something. So, but I've owned a bunch of these in the past. They're great guitars. This one especially, this is probably the first one that I've had that was a Prestige, especially. I've had a couple of the older Japanese ones and the RGs back in the early 90s. And even though they weren't Prestige, they came out of the Japan factory, and they were pretty much Prestige back in that day. And one of the best guitars I've ever owned was actually, I think it was a 91 or a 92 RG 770DX. That was a red one. And I used it in some of my early bands as well. And I actually got stolen from me at one point. And it wouldn't be until a couple of years later that I'd actually got it back by walking one day. I was in college, and I was walking down a street right by a music store, Case's Music, actually, in Sault Ste. Marie. And I was walking, this guy was having a garage sale. And he had like 4 guitars on stands mixed in and all this stuff. And as I was looking, I'm like, oh my God, that's my old red Ibanez. I know it is, right? So I kind of went up and then, called the police, came back, and I got my guitar back. But by that point, I was in college. I wasn't really playing much anymore. So I'd actually had to let it go. I kind of really needed the money. And actually, an old buddy of mine, Tim Morrison, bought the guitar, and he still has it to this day. So, and he hasn't owned very many guitars. He's owned that one pretty much since then. And I had gotten the guitar secondhand as well, but that was just amazing Ibanez. So I've always had a thing for these Ibanez guitars. And this series, though, especially the S series, I love how thin, like look how thin that body is. Like that is awesome. Whoa. Let me fix that for a sec. All right, fix that. So I'd always really liked this style of guitar for the thin bodies. This guitar especially, though, has, this is before Ibanez started using the DiMarzios in this S series. And this has Ibanez's own patent, I think they're called Hot Rails humbuckers in this. And this guitar is really, it has a lot of presence to it. Look, a lot of output. A lot of output to this guitar, so it really screams. I prefer actually Duncan JB pickup in the bridge. A little less output to it, a little more versatile. This guitar, though, screams. And I am using the exact same settings as I used last week, actually. So you can tell between the two guitars, there's a lot of high end on these pickups, and it really screams. But maybe I'll use it in one of my next solo albums or something. We'll see. Oh, wouldn't that be cool? So yeah, if you're new to my channel, it'd be great if I could ask if you could subscribe. My goal at the moment is to try to reach 1,000 subscribers, and I'm hoping to maybe do that by the end of this year of 2021. Going into 2022 would be really great. So if you like my content, I will be having a video every week. I'll probably have some other videos here and there, and especially if you follow me in Siren as well, I will post the odd video involving Siren. So if you want to join along from the ride and weekly Shreddees too, especially, please hit that subscribe button, hit the bell if you wish, and help me reach 1,000. The year was 1995. I was 18 years old. I was in what should have been my last year of high school. I was actually in and out of a lot of basement and garage bands at that time. I was jamming with a lot of people. I had only played one gig at this point. And I was hanging around with a lot of guys. We were doing a lot of drinking on the weekends, doing a lot of partying. And a buddy of mine that I went to high school with, Eric Schweinzer, who everybody called Schwartz, was in a band. He had started a punk band with some other guys in high school, our high school, that I didn't really know very well. But I started hanging out with them. And we had a party one night, and they were trying to find a name, and I remember that this girl was drunk and blurted out Frapperteterhead. For those that don't know, the story behind the name is that it was actually a bilingual girl, because I'm bilingual as well, French and English. She, I think, meant to say something about hit him in the head or whatnot. And those that know French, frappe is hit, right? Or to hit something. So Frapperteterhead came out, and that's how they came up with their name. So anyway, I used to hang out with these guys quite a bit and drink, and I'd seen them play so many times, and they were about to go and record their demo. I don't actually think it was their first demo. I think they had done a demo before that. So anyway, they're going in to do a demo for these songs that they had. And of course, there was a song in their set that Jay always struggled with in the solo section, because Jay just wasn't a solo player. He was a rhythm guitar player. So whenever they got to the solo, he would just play some sloppy mess of notes, right? Just some chromatic thing. And it was terrible, and he knew it too. So when it came time for them to go and record in the studio, they actually had approached me, asked me if I could come in and do the solo for that song in the studio for them, kind of like a guest appearance. And I was like, that's great, but I didn't want to play what Jay was playing. And I think they had played me the original version of the song at that time. And even that solo, I was like, this sounds like crap. So I had actually said, I'm going to write my own guitar solo. And then here I found myself going into the studio for the first time as a guest appearance to do a solo, something I wrote for a song called I Like Drugs. So to come up with a solo for the song, it actually had a pretty easy chord rhythm behind it, which was which basically is E, D, C, well, the B note going into the C. So basically the notes were E, D, and C. So I knew it was sort of based around an E minor kind of thing. So I decided to start with this little pattern here and slide into something, right? So, which is nothing too big. It's a little bit of a melody. And then right away I went into these sweeps, which is basically a D and a C minor sweep, which I don't know if it would be correct in the key of E minor, but I didn't really care. It kind of fit the song a bit. So that was kind of more of a rake than a really like a proper sweep, but that's what I could kind of handle at that time. And then just kind of have something a little bit bluesy. So and then the next pattern, which is actually kind of interesting, is where I finish. I actually started the next section with that same ending spot. And just move the whole pattern up twice, which this C sharp note isn't really in the scale, but it kind of sounded okay for the song. First time, right? So. And have a whammy bar trick in there, of course. And then this kind of a little pattern. Of course, my big use of legato was back then. And then finish with this little lick here. So that would be the first guitar solo I'd ever write and record in a studio. And what was really cool at that time is I did the solo. The guys weren't even there, I don't think. I was there with Gary Ingram, and he was the guy. He was actually also in a band called Fist Magnet, which was a kind of a popular punk band in our scene back at that time. And some talking had happened after I did the solo, and he loved it. He loved the solo for it, and he knew it wasn't the original solo. And he's like, hey, that was really cool, man. And here I am, a 18-year-old kid, and thinking, hey, I did pretty good here. The next day, Jay calls me, and he asks me pretty much to join the band. And I was like, what? You want me to join the band? But you're the guitar player, right? And he was like, well, no. They had talked, and Gary actually had convinced them that I should be actually playing in their band. But I didn't really know any of their songs and whatnot. And Jay had actually already recorded all the rhythm guitars for the whole album. So they were kind of like, no, we want you to kind of join in. So I was like, oh, boy. So I had to write some guitar solos pretty quick, because they actually had a few more songs where they actually had some kind of solo section, bridge sections that could use a guitar solo. So I had to kind of come up with a guitar solo right away. So there was another really cool song on there that was called Middle of Nowhere, that had this cool rhythm of... So they wanted me to do a solo over that. And I remember pretty much in one night I had to come up with a guitar solo for it. And I can't remember the whole thing at the moment, but I think it was I just kind of did some of the patterns that I knew really well at that time. And then, of course, all of a sudden I joined the band. But what I didn't know in the background is that they were actually letting their singer go, which was Rick Powell. And it kind of created kind of a strange situation, because I was actually living room and board with Rick and Kevin Powell and their family. So here all of a sudden I'm joining the band, and they're kicking Rick out of the band, who was the singer. And Jay decided, instead of being the guitar player in the band, he wanted me to completely take over the guitar duties, and he would become the singer of the band. So it kind of Frapperteterhead kind of did this big switch, and I became the guitar player. But of course I said to them, I'm a metal guy. I'm not really into just playing some of these punk songs where it's... or whatever, some of the easy stuff they were doing. So they were like, no, do solos and stuff. We'll be a crossover metal punk band, which I kind of thought was cool. So I had actually recorded, we'd become this album, Frapperteterhead. It doesn't even really, I guess it's self-titled. It doesn't actually really have a name to the album. And we had songs like Vote Yes for Anarchy, Randy is an Asshole, Ceiling Tiles and Light Bulbs. We did a cover of Fight for Your Right by the Beastie Boys. There was no spot in there for the solo, so I actually didn't even do a solo on it. My Toupee is Green, which is a funny song. I actually redid the clean guitar parts for this, for Jay, and tried to add a little bit of some licks in there. And of course, I too had that Middle of Nowhere song that was pretty cool. I Like Drugs. There was also this other song called the Beverly Whorebillies. So, which was kind of a funny song because it was based on a whole kind of a riff that was... Wow, can I remember how it goes? So, based off the Beverly Hillbillies, and it was actually the Beverly Whorebillies for us. And I remember I had to write a quick little solo for it. And I remember I just took the pattern where... with a wah pedal. I actually threw a wah pedal in there, and then that's how we came apart. That, and then there was a really bad cover version of I Want to Be Sedated, and then another song number 10 I don't really remember that song at all, which is sad. So anyway, so I did my first recording, and I'm happy I still have this cassette still sitting here. I found it in some of my stuff. So I had joined Frapperteterhead, and we played a few more shows. We'd open up for bands, local bands. There'd be the odd band that would come through. Can't really remember a lot of the bands. I think Dayglow Abortions might have been in there at one point. And of course, I would segue. We would kind of have a bit of a falling out for a while. I'm not sure what was happening, maybe too much partying and whatnot. And I'd actually go and I would join another band called Gut Wrench. So maybe at some point I will have an episode on Gut Wrench and feature something about Gut Wrench. And I actually got to record an album with them as well. And that would have been, I guess within about a year later, so when I was 19. But we did have one more show, if I'm not mistaken. Later on, after I joined Gut Wrench, we actually had one show. And if it's the show I'm thinking of, we actually played at the Rollorama rollering rink in the Sioux. And I remember there was supposed to be an out-of-town band that was supposed to show up. And they didn't show up. And I can't remember who else played with us on that bill. And the other band didn't show up. The out-of-town band, the traveling tour band didn't show up. And I remember the promoter, Chuck, I believe it was Chuck, he had asked us to keep playing. And we were like, we don't know any more songs, dude. So we were like asking us to keep playing songs. And we were like, we don't know what to play. So we were like just trying to play whatever we could think of. And here, I'm probably probably trying to play Slayer because I was actually playing Slayer before I played in Frapperteterhead. I was doing a lot of Slayer covers and stuff. So, but anyway, so that would have been the story of Frapperteterhead and my time in there. So, sorry, but we're just coming to the end of my video anyway, and I'm being called for. So, until next time, shred on. Look forward to seeing you next week. And as I said before, please subscribe. Take care.